Hey Lisa,
Donna, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Really good. Really looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. I was sharing with you earlier that it came through from Spirit as an invitation to extend to you to share about your healing journey, and in particular, your healing journey that's related to your fertility journey.
Mm.
And you just have such an amazing story to share that it feels like it's something that would make a lot of difference to a lot of other people. And I've known you for quite a few years now. And yeah, I think that everyone will see why I love and adore you so much after they hear you speaking and get to know you a little bit more. But I'm going to throw the ball over to you, Lee. So, do you want to talk a little bit about your healing journey, maybe where you started? Um, yeah, over to
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Spirit. It's been pretty huge actually, to reflect on the whole journey, to be honest. It's been really emotional and it's been really unexpected because I now have two beautiful children. My little boy is nearly 4 and a gorgeous girl who's just joined us nearly 7 months ago.
Yeah.
Um, but my fertility journey probably starts back in 2012, with my first pregnancy being or ending in a miscarriage at 8 weeks. And
Yes.
at the time, you know, it was devastating. And I think one thing that is really changing for the better these days is that we are speaking more about that sort of experience because so many of us have experienced it and are experiencing it.
Absolutely.
Um,
I
but
think, it was probably not far after yours that I had mine. And then I think, it wasn't even really that long ago. It was less than 10 years ago that all happened. But, back then it was like you might talk to your closest friends about it and you might only find out, through that like closest knit circle. But these days it feels like it's spoken about so much more widely and openly. It's so beautiful that women can feel like they don't go through that alone. And, we know how common it is now.
and it is, as you say, so much part of a lot of women's journeys, and too, or your partner, or however your family looks. Um, and so back then, I can honestly say I don't even know how I fell pregnant. I was in such what I would call a masculine energy. So I was focusing on career. I had no self-care skills whatsoever, not even. Um, it's just, yeah. And so
Talk a
that,
little bit more about the masculine energy, like focused on career, but how did you, like, were you connected with your feeling state?
no, no. And there wasn't, despite wanting to have a family, um, the fact that I was pregnant, couldn't really even register it. It was really hard to register it because I was so doing and achieving and being who I was supposed to be at that point in time for
Right.
everybody else. Yeah.
And
Mm.
in that space of that being, doing, achieving, do you feel, I just got that sense of like you being really driven from your head and not so connected with your body? Do you feel like that was a part of why you weren't, that the pregnancy seemed, to paraphrase what you said, like surreal?
Yeah.
Because you
I
perhaps
just,
connected with your emotions and your body?
yes.
Huh.
It's the only reason I realized I was pregnant because my beautiful dog, who I had this bit of a contract with, that she wouldn't leave until I was pregnant. She disappeared. She walked off into the bush one day and we couldn't find her. And we just knew that she was gone. And that was the night that I realised I was pregnant. So there wasn't, and yeah, unfortunately there wasn't a lot of joy around that moment.
No, because
but
it's good for you losing a dog.
Yeah,
before
my firstborn.
Firstborn.
But to then I didn't have the coping skills to cope with that loss. I had no way to really process that because I wasn't feeling a lot of it. So that just led to basically complete mental and physical breakdown and completely changed the course of my life. And
was it your dog that had gone missing, or that you realised that you were pregnant, or both?
I just lost you there. Sorry.
It
was the realization that I did want a family and to fall pregnant, and to be that something had to change. Yeah.
That's so massive, isn't it, Lise? Like, I can't tell you, I've had this a few times in client sessions where people have realised they actually want to be a mother.
Mm.
And it's like, it can be a huge shock to some people. Especially, and I think, I've got goosebumps, especially for you who was in that space of being career driven and being really quite successful, and there was a whole lot of that you haven't really spoken about, but that it came as a surprise that you really did want to have that baby, and you were pregnant, and the connection of the shock of realizing that you wanted that you were pregnant, combined with your dog departing, on all of that happening one day.
Yeah.
Far out.
Yeah. And so it was that realization that I had no way of, I had no skills, I had no way of actually getting from A to B. It just wasn't going to work in that current place.
And B was what?
B was having a family, being a family. Yeah.
And what did that mean about you? What did having a family mean that you had to be, or wanted to be?
It meant I had to be, I didn't have the words. I didn't have the awareness around it, but it was essentially being more connected to my feminine side, or my feminine energy, or having at least some form of balance. I didn't have that vocabulary or awareness at that point in time.
No,
but
of course
that's
not.
essentially what it was. Yeah.
What I'm hearing, what you're saying, is that you needed to be able to connect with your femininity to embody, to become that maternal mother that you desired to be.
100%.
Wow.
I was just so disconnected, Donna, from like any of that side. So, I had no idea. I was so disconnected from my own cycle. I have polycystic ovaries, so it's pretty irregular anyway, or it has been, and so there was just that complete disconnect from even that basic, idea of what a woman is, that we cycle and we can fall pregnant and we can then birth, and I have mentioned to you before that I feel like the first place that we started out with healing was that idea that a lot of us have that trauma, so that's sexual trauma or abuse in our pasts, and we are so disconnected from our womb space, you know, from
Space from your body.
because we, you know, if you know, if that trauma or abuse hasn't happened to us, there's certainly, you know, shame around, you know, sensuality and sexuality as a woman, you know, when we grew up. Shared with you, you know, 13 years of Catholic education, and, you know, they were still saying no sex before marriage in the 90s, you know. You know, female school teachers didn't live with their partners unless they were married.
Yep.
So, you know, really where
that's even gone way beyond the 90s, you know, in some Catholic schools. But you're right, like it was a different time, wasn't it? You know, you were either, I don't know about what it was like for you, Lise, but I remember at high school you were either a good girl, aka frigid, or you're a slut.
Yep.
And there was just such a lack of understanding around embodiment of the divine feminine. And I don't know if that's something that you gather as you get older, but certainly back then it was just a different world.
Yeah, I agree. Look, it probably does come with being a bit older and be the circles that you travel in. But
yeah.
I think for me, in terms of healing, if we're talking about healing, that really was another kind of, you know, a point that we worked through, and that has many layers. You know, that has many layers.
That does have many layers. As a woman can reconnects, like, you know, just to go back a step, actually, Lise, you know, you said about that probably where we started when you first started working with me was around healing trauma and so forth from the past. And I think whether you start there or you start just from that place of disconnection, of like, you know, being in your head and being really quite driven, or wanting to be successful in other people's eyes, or whatever success is being deemed to be by your family or your, you know, whatever community. You know, it doesn't really matter where we start exactly, but for you, this was integral, wasn't it? Why was it integral for you in terms of your fertility journey? And I think you're kind of talking about this, but I'm going to ask you to spell it out. Why was it integral for you to heal that trauma from the past in relation to your fertility journey, or being able to come to that, like, that woman, that mother that you wanted to become?
I think the first part of it, well, I know the first part of it for me was that just complete disconnect from that creation space that we have as women, which is our womb. You know, and there's so much shame around, you know, that, you know, our physical body. And then we disconnect from it. There's no awareness of it.
What's the shame for you around physical body? Can I ask you that? That's pretty personal. You don't have to.
Sure. I think it's, you know, just shame that as a young woman, you know, there is sexual desires and urges and things like that, but we don't, as you say, Donna, like you either bury them or you know, or you are a slut, you know. So
I'm more in between, and you keep it hidden as fuck.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, you know, and if it is hidden, it's very shameful, and that's been my experience. So, you know, that complete disconnect, and just that is part of being feminine.
It is.
Being female. Yeah. And so, you know, how can bring in, you know, create life and create motherhood if there's can disconnect from the actual, you know, physical places in your body where that happens? You know, it's funny that it makes so much sense now, but at the time it sure didn't. You know?
No, well, you're evolving, healing and evolving into a place that you don't know what that place is because you've never been there. So you also don't have any understanding of where it is that you're heading, of what path it is that you're on. You're just sort of blindly following the breadcrumbs and taking those steps of faith in line with your intuition, right? But
Yeah.
where you were saying that about being disconnected from your womb space and from your body, the parts of your body that actually creates, I was thinking about how many couples go through the motions of trying to conceive a baby, and when it's like ovulation time, and it's like, come on, time's a ticking, like it's the right date, honey, like tick tock, like get the job
Yeah.
done. And how mechanical and robotical is robotical even a fucking word, like how much you become like
It is now.
robot, about just the physicality of trying to conceive a baby. And it's
Yeah.
like, I know I was there at some point in time. You know, there was a point in time after we had a miscarriage, and it took months and months and months of trying to conceive before I was able to conceive my daughter. And those months and months of trying, my husband doesn't mind saying this, but it was around the ovulation time. I was doing the fucking saliva ovulation tests and, you know, trying to map my ovulation cycle and doing all the things. And what it came down to for me was, it was like, do babies really want to be born? They want to be born from love, right? They want to be conceived in love. And here we are going through this fucking mechanical process. Like it'll eventually get the job done. And if we just keep trying, it's like, you know, when so many people say, like when we stop trying, and this is literally what happened for me, is I said, that's it, I've had enough. Like, we've just got to stop trying. I can't do this anymore. Like, I've got to stop doing the ovulation test. I've got to stop, like, thinking about when I'm ovulating. Like, I've got to stop it. I've got to let it go. The exact month that I did that, we fell pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've had clients say to me, well, how do you let it go though, Donna? How do you let go? How do you let go of wanting to conceive when that's the thing that I want the most in the whole fucking world?
And I would wholeheartedly agree with that. Surrender to that, to trusting that it'll all work out, particularly when we're leaving it longer. That's, you know, with my son, we did need help. We did seek help. We didn't need a lot of it, but, you know, we surrendered our power to the medical system. And I wouldn't change that for the world, you know, like I just would not change that for the world. But it is that process is really disempowering. Yeah.
What did you find? This was before we'd met, right?
Yes.
What did you find disempowering about that process?
The first thing is when you start handing over, investing money in trying to conceive a child, all of a sudden you were used to paying money for results. Like, and money can generally guarantee a result in most other areas of our lives. You know, our investments are much more what's the word?
Getting a return on the investment.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that, all that starts to like ramp up what you're expecting from the process. But I believe the most disempowering thing is it just becomes a medical process. You no longer feel you're in control of any part of it. So this drug either works for you or it doesn't. and if it doesn't work this month, we'll come back and we will and this is what we'll do next, you know. And apart from doing what you're told, there's doesn't always feel like there's a lot else you can do to help yourself. But I think there is, and that's what I guess I'm getting to, is that there's so much more to it, I believe. Or in my experience, there's so much more to it.
All right.
Because
yeah, talk about that, and then talk about what transpired afterwards. Or
so we needed some help with my son, and then it took nearly 3.5 years of not being on any contraception for me to start ovulating again. So my problem is I don't ovulate on my own. And so, as you say, Donna, follow the breadcrumbs. There was a point at which I secretly started looking into fostering and, potentially
I remember those conversations.
And that was loss and grief in its own right, because I had to, kind of close the door, and that was how I was coping. How I was coping was trying to explore ways of, maybe accepting that, our journey was going to be different and wouldn't look the same as maybe what I thought it would. So opening my heart and my mind to that process, only to, realize that it wasn't going to suit our family, or it wasn't something we all both wanted.
Can I ask you a question about that, Liz? At the point of which you were considering fostering, was that because you believed that you couldn't conceive naturally, and therefore what are your other options if you don't want to have medical support to be able to ovulate and therefore conceive again? Is that how it happened? Or was it different for you?
No, I think I just think, Donna, I wanted to get off that merry-go-round of taking a pregnancy test every month and just having it tell me anything. And I did try to go back on the drugs again, and they just sent me crazy.
Yeah.
Because I'd done so much healing work, and I was in such a good headspace. They really affected me, and it just actually wasn't. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it.
You were so connected, and so you were in such a good space, and that was such a progression from where you'd been when you had your miscarriage, right? And the breakdown that you experienced after that whole incident or time. It was like chalk and cheese, and then to think that you had to go on to those, the medication that stimulated your ovulation and, in your words, sent you a bit crazy. To go from that space of feeling really well in yourself in all aspects, I'm talking internally, right? Like not physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and then to have the impact of the drugs. Do you think that you really noticed more of a difference because there was such a contrast?
Yes, because I believe the side effects were actually the same both times.
Yeah. But the first time around, you might not have noticed it that much.
It wasn't. I didn't, because it wasn't actually that. It wasn't that far from my normal.
At that point in time. Yeah.
At that point in time, yeah.
All right. So then you went through the process of secretly considering fostering.
Yeah.
Then you realized that not all parts of your family were on board for that or up for that.
Yeah, and that just wasn't going to work for us. So, there was hope and loss and grief in that. Grief that not being able to pursue that for a good few months. And how do you explain that to someone? you know, how do you you trust, it's like the miscarriage, it's like it's that hope, and it's that you never actually, it's something you never actually had in your hands, but you still grieve it, and you've got to just keep going and get on with it.
But this is,
And this is where,
at least,
mm,
you know, that even the idea of motherhood can take on such depth, because as a mother, even a mother to be, you are feeling at the core of your bones or in your waters that possibility of bringing forth that child. Now, whether that's conceiving, birthing a child, whether that's bringing a child in through foster care or adoption, or who knows what other ways that might happen. But there is still, like, it's like having had the baby there, because it's like the same with the miscarriage. Like, the baby's there, you've already imagined its whole future. A friend of mine said, you look at the pregnancy, the positive pregnancy test, and you've already decided what their name is and what school they're going to. It's like you've got the whole future mapped out. Because when, I think as a mother, you take that possibility and you body it. You put that possibility in your body, you sit with it in your heart, you connect with it so deeply that you have to really consider, could this be a real option? And to consider it to be a real option, you have to feel it. Like, fuck, like you have to feel it.
yeah.
And so to hear you say that, how do you explain that to other people? I really get that, because it's from a mother's perspective. And even from a father's perspective, or I should say a parent's perspective, but I really get that sense of, as a woman, there's that embodiment, right? So when you say that, like, I really understand that. And I think other women and other men, other parents who've experienced this will really understand that too, that, you know, whether it's through miscarriage, just that even letting yourself go there and it not coming to fruition, there can be grief around that.
Yeah.
When we open up our hearts, like I always say, you know, like motherhood, it's like the greatest love that you'll ever experience, but it's also the greatest heartache you'll ever experience too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It is.
And I do believe it takes, you know, it takes so much to actually consider being a mum.
Yeah.
And then once you, as you say, once you're going through this process and either isn't working at all, or, you know, you think you've got it and then you don't, you know, you have to, that's the surrender, isn't it? You know, that's the surrender of having to open yourself up to whatever happens, and I'm going to be okay regardless.
Right? That is,
And that is the biggest.
that's the letting go. That's what you're letting go of. For me, that's what I let go of when I stopped doing the ovulation tests and I stopped trying, you know? That is such a perfect way to describe it.
And to be honest, Donna, you know, maybe, you know, just feeling, sitting with what we were saying about, you know, different options, you know, for me, potentially fostering, maybe that was getting me out of it. Maybe that was, you know, getting me out of having to surrender, because maybe it's just dropping in for me that it was also a way to control an outcome that I felt very out of control of.
Mm.
Yeah.
Far out, at least that's a big point, isn't it? Like, and as you said before, this is a process that you can't control, and I think that people do take extraordinary measures to try and control it. Even doing the ovulation test is an example of that, you know. But there is far more that you can do to try and control it. Like, you know, I've heard of people going on particular diets, of doing, you know, we've all heard about, like, have sex and then put your legs up in the air for however long, like, you know, all the different things, strategizing,
Yeah.
but also controlling a process. And because at the end of the day, there's such a strong desire to have that child earth side, to have that soul that you can feel, that you know is there to be with you.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is everybody's experience, but it's certainly, you know, I guess maybe in our circles, Donna, it is that people do connect with and do, you know, realize the presence of these souls and spirits to them received. And whether that's your experience or not, certainly one of the most frustrating things for me was being told time and time again by different people, oh, you've got a little boy around you. He's just waiting. He's waiting for what?
Come in! Come in, you little bugger! They're waiting for you! He's waiting!
I know you're there, you know, but what am I doing? You know, what do I need to do now? Or, you know, that yearning.
What do I need to do now? What was that process, Lise?
Oh, what was it? Well, for I'll just say when I conceived my son and he popped out, I was really glad he was a boy. Okay, because I had a lot of work to do around how was I going to raise a daughter. That probably doesn't answer your question, Donna. Sorry, but
fine, go with it.
But
you want to talk a little more about that?
So petrified of having a girl, because I didn't know myself what it was for a woman. Like I hadn't worked that out for myself. You know, if you're really honest, and I never ever lay any blame, and this is definitely not the point of it, but when you look at things like your maternal timelines, you know, what's come through and what's been modeled for you, and what's come through in the DNA. You know, our grandmothers went through World War II and, you know, wars, and there was a real feel of you know, there was struggle and there was lack, and so they never really felt abundant, I don't think, certainly in my grandparents' generation, in my case. And so there wasn't a lot of joy about, you know, it wasn't time to enjoy being a woman or or experience that joy of connection and things like that, about getting on with it and getting things done. And so, you know, even, yeah, I really didn't feel I could then, you know, what was being a woman? Was it knowing how to do your hair nice? Was it, you know, like was it those superficial things? You know, was it wearing high heels? Because I'm such a tomboy, I always have been. You know, and you know, on the surface, it was probably, I felt like it was those superficial things, but really, the beautiful benefits of being in community with other women and sharing, there's obviously a lot more to it. You know, there's the connections that we can make and the depth of connections when women aren't in competition with each other, you know. There's some really beautiful things that come out of that. So basically, I had no idea how to be a mother to a daughter. So there's certainly, you and I have worked on that timeline for sure.
Yeah, and just to, like, for people who don't know what that maternal, like, timeline stuff is that we're talking about, in our space, we play with the concept that we inherit a whole lot from our ancestors, from our parents, from our parents' parents, our parents' parents, parents' parents, all through the timeline, so the ancestral timeline, and we inherit all sorts of amazing things. We inherit incredible gifts and strengths from our families. We also inherit our intuition comes from particular parts of our family. We're born with gifts that come from our family, but we're also born with potentially unprocessed trauma that has been experienced through the generations as well. And so in this space where I do work with people, and I know that Lisa, I'm pretty sure that you do this as well, we work on healing the timeline so that people are freed from anything that they've have been brought through or inherited on that in that way that is like really, as I said, unprocessed trauma or things that haven't been healed yet in the timeline. And so as we heal that for ourselves, we're also enabling that energy of healing energy to flood through our timeline, to flood it into our family too. The other thing that I wanted to reflect on, which is you didn't say, but I know for me, like, it was a pretty big thing to bring a girl into the world, particularly as a woman who's been sexually abused before. And so the healing that I've needed to do around that as preparation to be able to be a mother of a girl has also, had triggered so much stuff for me around like even when I was pregnant and I thought I was fine with all the stuff that I'd experienced, I had massive triggers because I felt that I was pregnant with a girl, even though we didn't find out until she was born. I had massive triggers around my the abuse and trauma that I'd experienced. And so there's this whole preparation that some of us need to go through to be able to really be that mother that we want to be, that isn't traumatized, that can hold space for a vulnerable, authentic, strong girl baby that's going to turn into a girl, that's going to turn into a teenager, that's going to turn into a woman. And what I hear you saying in the way that you have been embodying your feminine is that you have been like integrating all parts of you, Lisa, your sexuality, your sensuality, your femininity in your own unique way. It might not appear as superficial, what you would have called superficial hair or whatever, but it's really about you embodying that divine feminine that was a part that wasn't expressed or accepted within you before. And it was much more easy for you to sit in that masculine space of doing all the time and working and pursuing a career and all the things. So I think like what this healing journey for me is about, like accepting and bringing in all of the parts of ourselves and just acknowledging and being with and just loving all of the different aspects of ourselves, because when we can do that, it doesn't matter if we have a little girl who has a really strong sex drive, or it doesn't matter if we have a girl that is seems quite vulnerable, or it doesn't matter if we have a girl that's like so fucking strong, she's going to rule the world, or it's okay, because when we've accepted those parts within ourselves, we know that we can accept that wholehearted expression of this soul, however they want to express themselves, and be able to hold that space and provide that like guidance and love and support for them. However, I just have gone on a bit of a rant and a rave, haven't I?
Not at all. I love that. I love how you summed that up. That's beautiful. Yeah.
I think it's so true. And ultimately what
because if
go.
Oh, I was just going to say, because if you haven't dealt with it before having kids, and this little soul's job is to come in and help you deal with it, they're going to help you deal with it.
It's going to be like
they're going to make you deal with it.
Smack in the face.
Yeah.
All of the shit that comes up for you. And I don't know, I did a fair bit of healing work, I thought, before I had in the lead up at least to having my daughter, and I hadn't even started. And then she was born and I had all this shit come up, and then she hit, this age, and I had all this shit come up, and it happened with my son too, like as he's hit different ages, stuff from when I was that age has all surfaced for me. So have no doubt about it, these incredible souls coming in are absolute enablers for us to heal ourselves so we can be the parent that they need us to be when we work consciously with it, of course.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just being triggered to the shit house all the time and you don't know why, and then you just blame them because they're little shits of kids, right? It's not the truth. It's not
No.
the truth. They're just mirror on the wall. So, and I feel like part of the healing journey as well, even up to the point of conception, it's like, I know that I only conceived my daughter when I felt happy. And I wasn't happy before that. Guarantee you.
Yeah.
I struggled after I had my son. It took me ages to have that sense of self again. I couldn't, it was like trying to figure out who I was in the world again and who I was as this new identity of a mother. And then, but it doesn't matter whether you're a mother or not a mother. I believe that, how many times have you heard of people falling pregnant when they've gone on a holiday? Or they've had like a big boozy fucking night? They got absolutely blind drunk and they conceived a baby. It's like, you let it all go. Like, you let all
just happy being yourself.
Just happy. We just decided that we to sell our house and we were going to move to somewhere that I'd always wanted to move, and I was really happy about that. And as soon as that happened, I fell pregnant.
Best laid plans.
Right.
The universe had other ideas.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing about it. But like I truly believe our healing journey is that. It's like for us to be able to come into this space of freedom and joy and relax, right? And then when we get to that space, conception sort of just happens. That's been my experience. When we're in tune, when we're intuitively connecting, like that it's time for us. I think that's the other part.
And it's, I guess, the frustration, and it's like that. It's still in me, so I can feel it even as you're talking. I'm kind of like, but how do you know? When is enough? Because we have spoken about. I just, it's probably easy for us to sit here and talk about it because, this would be my reaction if I was still struggling. Okay, to us having a chat about this would be, well, it's okay for you guys. You're sitting there with two babies.
Yeah, you've had your babies. You can fuck off.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is to talk about
still that little part of me. Still that little part of me, Donna, that wants to react that way to what you're saying. And, I was saying the other day, I was talking to that
something's just like gone a bit funny with the audio. Start talking again.
I think you're back now.
Yeah. Say that again.
So coming from that, that feeling of frustration that, and the fact that everybody else in the world falls pregnant when you're trying to conceive. So I work in a predominantly female field, and everybody fell pregnant while I was trying to fall pregnant with my son. One of my colleagues had 2 babies in that time, and I was just like, come on. Come on. Surely you can share it around slightly.
In hindsight, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go.
No, but there's that part of you that is always sort of feels that way, I guess. And
I don't know.
I guess I want to acknowledge that if that's what someone was feeling as they were watching it, I still can really truly connect with that.
I bet you there are people who are feeling like that and feeling frustrated and really want their baby and really feel like it's time and really get that on that intuitive level, and it's not happening.
Yeah.
There are people that are in that space, and so thank you for acknowledging that. And I think you're right. It is easy to sit here on the flip side and say, oh, you just need to be happy. You just need to go into find a happy place, or you need to go on a holiday or have a busy night. But that's, you know, what we're also talking about is you've done a fuckload of, and that's the technical term, of inner work before your body naturally started ovulating.
Yeah.
And
so that,
can you talk a bit about that?
yeah, absolutely. I guess the culmination of my, we're talking about maternal timeline, or, you know, our ancestral timeline, but I'm a believer of past lives and soul groups. And, you know, I don't mind sharing that I've, you know, connected with past lives where I've actually taken my own life in those lifetimes. And, you know, I know it to be true that in one of those lives, you know, I left behind twin boys, and they were quite young. And I've always yearned in this lifetime for twin boys. I
Wow.
always said that when I was younger. Yeah. So part of, you know, my journey has certainly been learning to overcome and manage, you know, depression and anxiety. And, you know, it was only before, so my daughter is nearly 7 months old, and we'd been doing some sessions, Donna, as part of one of your groups, and I came to you and I said, hey Donna, I reckon I've started ovulating again. And you're like, yeah, of course you have. I'm like, no, but I think I've done it on my own. And you're like, yeah. Like, but how did that happen? And don't I still can't tell you the exact moment um, whereby something, you know, the exact moment where something shifted to enable that to happen in my energy, in my body. But what I can happily tell you is that, you know, it was 2 months of ovulating on my own, and we conceived my daughter. And it was really only when I sat with being pregnant and really opening up to being okay, however that, you know, having experienced miscarriage before, that I realized the big shift for me was that actually, you know, I'd cleared and I'd healed that part of me that every time in this lifetime something kind of didn't quite go my way, or it got on top of me, my default pathway in my brain was like, oh well, maybe I don't need to be here anyway. You know, I lived with that for so many years. And, you know, it was only when I experienced the joy of being pregnant that I realized, and it was, you know, reflecting on a situation that normally would have sent me down that feeling that way.
Yeah.
That I realized that's not the normal for me anymore. So, you know, really, Donna, I think that was the culmination of it, was those, you know, 5 years of just following what I thought interested me, what made me a little bit curious, to work with you, to work, you know, with some of my Reiki master, to go to this workshop, to go to that workshop. It just was the culmination. So what was actually for me was for that little soul to know that, you know, if they were going to come in, that I was going to stick around, you know, that I was committed to sticking around for them. Yeah, like 100%. Yeah. And I just know that so many of us struggle with our mental health these days. And, you know, it's not that you want to go and hurt yourself, or it's not that you want to, you know, end it all necessarily, but, you know, that there are those, you know, we do have dark thoughts. And I think that some of us more than others, and we don't always share that. So, but I can just so happily say that I think that was it. But I don't know when that happened. I just know it happened some time ago. Yeah. Yeah.
I just want
Um,
to acknowledge you for sharing that. Like, that is such an inner part of your world that I don't know how much you've spoken that before, but whatever it's taken for you to share that, I just want to acknowledge that because that's huge, Lise. And
Thank you. Yeah,
I don't think I knew that before tonight, that that was like the the thing that you really, the clinch pin, the thing that you really nailed or mastered. And it
yeah,
just, when you said that, I was like, oh my God, yes, that like this, the soul of your baby was waiting to make sure that you weren't going to opt out.
yeah,
And not that I think that you ever would have before, but when that's a default like thought in your mind, it's almost like having a back door or an escape route, isn't it? If things get too hard, well, that might just slip down that pathway.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And it's so exhausting to live that way. It's so exhausting. And how can you be fully present for the one? And so I guess what it really means, Donna, is that and everyone's experience will be different, and everyone's challenge or everyone's little thing is
Or
different.
automatic, or that backdoor thought or whatever will be different too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, if we're talking about healing and fertility, maybe that resonates for some people, or maybe there's something else that they'll heal on that level. But sometimes we can be consciously aware of it, and sometimes we're not. So I didn't have the conscious awareness that was what needed to shift. But I just tuned in. I surrounded myself with people that helped me do that, and committed to learning the tools to be able to I guess sit with that stuff. Yeah, to sit with all of it, the good, bad, and the ugly. So
Yeah. And I just, it's that what you don't know that you don't know.
mm,
Like, you don't have conscious awareness about the shit that you're still carrying that's blocking you and stopping you in your life. Like, you don't have that conscious awareness. If you did have that conscious awareness, you'd do something about it, wouldn't
you
you?
just put it the fuck down.
Wouldn't
That's what you
you?
do.
The power and put that fucker out. Like, you you just would. You'd do something about it. That's a thing until,
Yeah,
you know, that's what I believe healing is. It's like putting a light on, like shining a light on those parts of us that are still being unconscious or subconscious that we don't even really know that are there. And that's why
yeah,
why you enter into healing work. It just feels like a good idea. It just feels like that might be a good thing to do. And you can't even put words around it much more than that, because you
yeah,
don't know, but your intuition is telling you, Donna, there's something to fucking have a look at over here, and you're going
mm,
to need some support to do it.
yeah.
We can't do that shit by ourselves.
Hell no,
Otherwise, we would have
no,
it already.
no. Exactly. If it was that easy, we'd just do it. You
Yeah.
know.
That's why
Um,
I always have a coach or a mentor that I'm someone, a healer or someone, at least one person that I'm working with. I'm usually working with two people
yeah,
because, like,
yeah,
it's a continuing process. It doesn't fucking end.
no,
And I know if I'm doing that work and facilitating for other people, I always need to be doing it for myself. I've got to walk my talk. Got to walk my talk.
mm.
So how do you feel this process, healing process for you, in particular your fertility journey, being able to conceive naturally after only two months of ovulation, after all of that?
Yeah.
How do you feel that this is translating into the work that you do with other people, Lise?
Mm. It's for me. I'm really grateful that people have held space for me and shared tools with me on how to get myself um, just living a happier life. And being okay with stuff not being okay all the time. We're not taught that. And you know, my work is in my own way, holding space for people that are called to work on themselves and do and learn skills, you know, because life is just infinitely better when you've got that toolkit, you know. And what this, like you say, Donna, it doesn't stop. So, you know, we've talked about conception, we've talked about being pregnant, and now we're going to be mums, you know, like, or we are mums. And so my particular interest at the moment is obviously holding space for mums, and creating communities through things like women's circles. And, you know, it's just, I think for me, it's just being able to accept ourselves, the good, the bad, and the ugly, you know, and we can accept ourselves, and love ourselves. That's love ourselves. You know, we can love our loved ones, and we can love our kids, like you said, Donna, and just hold space for them to be able to be who they need to be.
Yeah.
And be open to the lessons that they're here to teach us as well, because it goes both whether we like it or not. So
I think it is such a fucking old paradigm and concept that we're here to teach our kids. Like, that is like going back into the bloody prehistoric ages, you know, in my humble opinion. You know, these souls that are coming through, like our children who are already here, are so far beyond us already that truly we are here to learn from them. And the whole next wave of kids, of these souls that are coming in, this whole next like influx of them, is even next level again. Like, truly our job is to just be trying to wipe the slate clean from all the ancestral stuff, trying to get ourselves into a place of love, like seriously be in that state of love and acceptance, as you say, so we can create a foundation where they can come and do the magic. Like, our healing work is not the magic. It is the magic, and it's fucking amazing, but it's nothing on what these children are going to be doing. I've got goosebumps. I truly believe that. So it's to really have that growth mindset, to really look at our children and allow us to see what needs to be within us that gets triggered by them, and just to allow us to learn from them is just, I've got to tell you this, Lise. So I'm laying in bed with the kids this morning, school holidays, right? Laying in bed with the kids this morning. I did work, but anyway, we had a cruisier morning because I could take them at a bit later. Laying in bed with something about, I don't know how this came up. I promise I didn't instigate this conversation, because you know how I'm all about the stars, right? So my daughter Violet goes to me, well, what's the pink planet called? And I was like, I don't know. I'm scratching my head thinking, could it be Mars, the red planet? Is Mars the red planet? Anyway, I'm not very good with these things, even though I love the stars. And I'm like, maybe it's Mars. And she's like, I go, maybe Mars, and I think that's the red planet. And she goes, no, Mummy, pink, the pink planet. So then my son grabs my phone, and because he loves to like do that, ask the questions of Google into the phone. So he's like, what's the pink planet called? And there's actually a fucking planet. Did you know? So it's a magenta planet. And so we talk about magenta all the time in our family because Violet's got magenta runners. So we always talk about magenta. Anyway, so there's actually a magenta planet. And then Archie says, I swear to God, I didn't prompt any of this. He goes, so something about like validating aliens being true. And I was like, and he asked me
Just their awareness.
the phone off him, and I said, babes, you're going to find all sorts of answers on the internet if you ask that question. I'll tell you.
Let's not Google that one.
Think it's an alien, and that's
Yeah.
typical conversation in my bed of a Friday morning. You know, like, honest to goodness. I'm like, that's just a normal everyday conversation for them. I don't talk about star beings with them just quietly. You know, I don't do that.
They know things that we are yet to know, but they just know it.
Mm-hmm. It's just
So
natural.
Yeah, unless you're open to knowing it, you're not going to know it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so cool.
They freak me out sometimes, those kids. It's amazing. Oh, so is there anything else that you wanted to share about your healing journey, Lise?
Look, I think we've, as we said, it's going to look different. There's going to be different starting points, but certainly just appreciation for reflect on my journey and to, I hope that there's something, even just one sentence in this little conversation, Donna, that, gives somebody a little bit of direction or a little bit of hope or a little bit of allowance to surrender to the process and to find a way to feel empowered in a process that quite often is really disempowering. So yeah,
I think that's the thing. There are other ways. There are other ways rather than feeling like you have to surrender all of your control. And I'm not saying that I'm averse to IVF or anything like that.
no.
I'm not saying that, but I am saying that what if all women did the inner healing work? What if all women were so connected to their intuition, they knew what was right for them, rather than having other people tell them what they have to do? Because at the end of the day, women know.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of connecting with the intuition. It's a matter of doing the fucking inner work so you're able to have that clarity with your intuition as well. So you're not making those decisions based on fear. You come into that place of being so clear and so grounded, that you can really choose to follow your intuition and really allow your own journey to unfold in the most empowering way it possibly can.
That's it. Couldn't have said it any better.
And I also think that, what it is that people go through, our greatest challenges are also our greatest gifts. Like the things that you've gone through, and for you to be able to say that you love yourself, that you embody the divine feminine now, that you have, for some of our time, we haven't talked about this tonight, but so I hope you don't mind me saying, but like that you really were able to move into an intuitive style of parenting, which you learned and you taught yourself along the way. And that was a whole lot of our healing work, that you did on that too.
Yeah.
Like who you are now as a woman, as a mother, and as a space holder is such a testament to your own personal healing journey. And therefore you can see that your greatest challenges are your greatest gifts, because that's what you share with the world. And I deeply feel that when we do that, our own healing work, that we also start to connect with what our gifts are through that. That our cracks, so to speak, are where the light enters. There's that Rumi quote, and I'm not going to quote it because I can't quite remember, but that's a summary of it. Where we crack open is where the light enters. And truly our healing of our own challenges leads to such gifts and us being able to share wisdom in the world. And you're such a perfect demonstration of this.
Thank you, Donna. I appreciate it. And you're certainly a huge part of that. you know, and intense gratitude is what came through then. Intense gratitude for that.
You're so welcome. It's been so my honour to have done all of that work with you previously. You know, it's been yeah, absolutely my honour.
Thank you.
Yeah. So shall we wrap it up?
Indeed.
Well, thank you again so much. Wholeheartedly thank you for sharing your story and being so open and authentic and gorgeously vulnerable. I really appreciate it. I'm sure that more than one of your little sentences will hit home with people, and so I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Yeah,
all right,
thank you.
lots of love.